Welcome everyone, I'm Dale and this is Cinema Historia. This week we're going back to 1942 for a Christmas musical film called Holiday Inn, starring Bing Crosby, Fred Astaire, Marjorie Reynolds, and Virginia Dale. Now this is directed by Mark Sandrich and the story and music is by Irving Berlin. Now where does our story begin this week? Well, it begins with a trio. Jim Hardy, played by Bing Crosby, Ted Hanover, played by Fred Astaire, and Lila Dixon, played by Virginia Dale. And they're a singing trio and they have a song and dance act in New York City. Now on Christmas Eve, Jim is preparing to have his final performance. He's going to be retiring because he's marrying Lila, and they're going to be spending the rest of their days in Connecticut. Jim just bought a farm. Well, that same evening, Lila tells Jim that unfortunately she's fallen in love with Ted instead. So heartbroken, Jim bids both of them farewell. He goes and tries to make a go of his farm, but to no avail, and he ends up in a sanitarium at some point. But the following Christmas Eve, Jim is back in New York City and he plans to turn his farm into a Holiday Inn. Now he wants to make it into an entertainment venue that's only open on holidays. He ends up telling this to Ted and his manager, Danny Reed. Now Danny has to leave and ends up going to a flower shop, and there he meets Linda Marshall, who's played by Marjorie Reynolds. And of course she knows that he's a manager and she tries to steer him towards, giving her a chance at singing. She's an aspiring singer. He says, well, I have a friend that's opening up a new Holiday Inn. Why don't you try go seeing him? So she does. On Christmas Day, Linda arrives at the Holiday Inn and meets Jim. And Jim says, well, what can you do? And she says, well, I'm an aspiring singer. And of course, she sings the song with him, White Christmas, that he'd just written. Going over quite well, so she gets the job. So on New Year's Eve, the Holiday Inn opens to a packed house. But back in New York City, Ted learns that Lila is leaving him for a Texas millionaire. So leaving their place drunk, he shows up at the Holiday Inn at midnight and literally stumbles into Linda. They end up having a big drunk dance scene together, and they pretty much bring down the house. The manager Danny arrives and is ecstatic to find out that Ted has now found a new partner. But unfortunately in the morning, with Ted being hungover, he doesn't remember who Linda is. And Jim ends up hiding her, afraid that he'll end up stealing her away. So is that what happens? Does Ted eventually find Linda, his new dance partner, or does Jim keep her hidden away while he tries to get the inn established? This movie was a big hit in 1942. It ended up being the number 8th top grossing film in the USA in 1942, but in 1943 it won an Academy Award for Best Original Song, which was White Christmas by Irving Berlin. Also, it was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Score and for Best Original Story. Now, the success of the song White Christmas eventually turned into another movie. In 1954, the movie White Christmas came out with Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye. And I have this movie if someone would like a review on it. If you like if you've seen White Christmas movie, then you would enjoy this one as well. Also, the attack on Pearl Harbor in Hawaii occurred halfway through the filming of this movie. So as a result, the 4th of July segment was expanded beyond Fred Astaire's firecracker dance to include a patriotic number that highlights the strength of the U.S. military. Pretty neat scene. It required 3 days of rehearsal and 2 days of filming. And after 38 takes, Fred Astaire finally accepted the final one. Now, the drunk dance scene at the Holiday Inn was pretty unique. Fred Astaire actually had 2 drinks of bourbon before filming, and then he took 1 drink again of bourbon after each take, and it took 7 takes. Yeah, he just wasn't faking it on film. So, a little more history and a trivia question coming up next. this week, since our story hovers around an inn, I thought it'd be interesting to do history on a hotel that used to be in my area. And it was in its heyday during the 1940s, the same as this movie. Now, this hotel is, or was, near a provincial park near me, which was called Presqu'ile Provincial Park. And Presqu'ile stands for almost an island. It's right near Brighton, Ontario, Canada. We're on the north side of Lake Ontario. We're directly across from Rochester, New York. Now, in 1920, most of Presqu'ile, except for the lighthouse area, was transferred from federal to provincial jurisdiction. In 1922, Provincial Parks Act was passed, allowing private commission to run the park. And in 1954, Provincial Parks Act was introduced, bringing all parks under one jurisdiction, which is what it is now. But skipping back in time, Presqu'ile was used as a shelter along the military supply route of the War of 1812. In 1840, construction of Presqu'ile's lighthouse was completed. In 1846, the lighthouse keeper's residence was built. But a big factor for the hotel being built down there, in 1889, construction of the Murray Canal was completed, linking Presqu'ile Bay to the Trent-Severn waterway. So with a lighthouse and easier access by boat, in 1905, the Presqu'ile Summer Hotel was opened at what was then called Calf Pasture. So in 1905, a fish and fruit exporter from Brighton named Peter Covell opened what was then called Hotel Presqu'ile, west of the current government dock. When the hotel opened, it had no hydro, water, and not even road access. It could accommodate a maximum of 50 guests, which arrived by boat. Covell also had built a dance pavilion behind the hotel where live bands would often play to a full crowd, ready to dance the night away. Now, the hotel had many sporting facilities such as a riding stable, tennis and badminton courts. In the early years, though, the hotel was open only seasonally. In 1913, though, competition came across the road, and Grant Quick opened a dance hall called Quick's Pleasure Palace, which proved to be a big hit. After 1 year of competition, Grant Quick took over management of the hotel and renamed it the Presqu'ile Summer Hotel. Now, we managed to bring running water to the point, and in 1923, he brought electricity to the hotel. With Quick now running the operation, people could enjoy lawn bowling, baseball, volleyball, croquet, and boat racing. And some of the film footage you're looking at is from 1927. Now, in 1930, though, the cost of the stay at the hotel was $7 per person per night. Many annual traditions were started at the Presqu'ile Hotel. One of the most famous was the annual Rochester to Presqu'ile yacht race held every July 4th. The race would begin in Rochester, New York, as part of the Independence Day celebrations. Now, in the 1940s, admission to the pavilion was $1, and codgers could get a season's pass for $10. On a good evening, there would be up to 700 to 800 people in and out of the pavilion, and the young people called the pavilion the Pav. Now, the hotel was at its peak. By that point, people were enjoying canoeing, kayaking, golfing, dancing, rowing, and sailing. But in the late 1960s, the popularity started to decline. Quick couldn't keep up with the new demands and maintaining the hotel. After his death in 1971, the hotel was torn down and the land was divided into small lots and sold off. Now, I was recently down at that area. It's just outside the park where there's cottages, so I did a few photos. The dock is still there, partly there anyway, and it's used by some of the local cottagers for their boats. And I found a couple of pieces of concrete sticking out of the ground right near the water, which I think would have been the staircase right down to the dock, because it's right in front. Pretty interesting stuff. So the trivia question this week, was the hotel name ever used for anything other than the movie? Yes, it was. The Holiday Inn hotel chain was founded in August 1st, 1952, and the name of the Holiday Inn hotel chain was inspired by this film. If you'd like a movie review yourself, please don't hesitate to leave it in the comments. I'd be happy to help you out. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope to see you back next week.